When I arrived home from work on Wednesday evening, my wife of a decade, Linda, was waiting for me. She beckoned me to sit at the table, signaling the start of what I anticipated would be a series of unpleasant conversations based on what I'd read. With a deep breath, she expressed her love for me and reassured me of her commitment to our marriage. But her next words caught me off guard. She wanted to take a lover. I braced myself, struggling to comprehend her desire to pursue someone else while claiming to love me and cherish our relationship. "So, let me get this straight," I interjected. "You claim to love me and want to protect our bond, yet you're proposing to be intimate with someone else?" "That's putting it rather bluntly," she replied. "I've met someone I'm interested in having a physical relationship with. It would be occasional, and I promise to be honest with you about it. If you truly love me as you say you do, you'll allow me this freedom because I believe it won't affect my love for you." Her words stung, and I struggled to comprehend her rationale. Linda, however, seemed unfazed, even smiling as she continued. She questioned me about my hypothetical reaction if the roles were reversed, but I knew she wouldn't handle such a suggestion well herself. Despite my doubts, I tentatively expressed a willingness to consider her proposal, albeit with the condition that it wouldn't jeopardize our relationship. She exclaimed, "Bullcrap! You know you would have flipped out if I even mentioned it." I scoffed, catching her off guard. She seemed surprised, saying, "I didn't expect you to react this way. I thought your love for me would allow me to pursue something so important to me. Whatever you're smoking must be illegal. Did you think I'd just give you a green light to go sleep with this guy? Instead, you expect me to sit at home while you spend the weekend with him. Maybe I didn't think things through very well." "You think?" I retorted. "Yeah, I didn't really consider everything like your feelings. If I say no, will you still go ahead with it?" she asked uncertainly. "I don't know. I didn't think you'd refuse. I didn't think this through very well," she admitted. "Tell you what, give me a few days to mull it over. Let's reconvene Sunday afternoon after I've had time to think. You really caught me off guard tonight." I headed to our bedroom and started moving my things to the guest room. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I'd rather not share a bed with someone who's thinking more about someone else than me," I replied, slamming the door once I was in the guest room. Sleep was elusive, but I formulated a plan. I also concluded that if she went through with it, we were done. The next day, I left for work at my usual time, not exchanging a word with Linda. I called my workplace and requested 2 days off for personal reasons. Then I went out and purchased 3 voice-activated recorders. I strategically placed them, one near the phone, one in the bedroom, and one in her car. Additionally, I obtained a phone tap recorder and installed it on our phones. My next destination was the cell phone provider. With my name on her phone account, acquiring a copy of her phone charges was a breeze. While she was still at work, I delved into her email accounts. I stumbled upon one I didn't know about, but the password was simple. There, I discovered a wealth of information, thankfully noting that she hadn't been intimate with him yet. I configured it to discreetly forward any emails from that account to me. My agenda for the day also included obtaining a pair of GPS locators, compact and easy to conceal. I planned to place one in her wallet, assuming she'd keep her cash and cards with her, and the other in her car. It was a busy day, but everything aligned for me to keep tabs on her. The only missing piece was her cell phone. I hoped to retrieve it in the evening, along with planting the GPS devices. Upon checking her emails, I discovered a correspondence between her and Frank Jones, a colleague whom I intended to retaliate against. The emails confirmed their plans for the upcoming weekend, rendering my objections futile. On Friday, I consulted a highly recommended divorce lawyer, instructing him to initiate proceedings citing adultery, with Frank Jones as the co-defendant. My lawyer assured me that with sufficient evidence, suing him would be straightforward. Armed with email exchanges, phone records, and soon-to-be audio recordings, he commenced the legal process promptly. When Linda returned home that evening, I remained silent and distant. As she prepared dinner, I left for a bar to eat and have a few drinks. Upon my return, she attempted to engage me in conversation, but I brushed past her, retreating to the guest room and slamming the door shut. The only chance she had to salvage our marriage was to cancel her plans with Frank, but I doubted that would happen. I gave her the cold shoulder for the remainder of the weekend until Sunday afternoon. I informed her it was time to talk, and we settled into seats in the kitchen. I took the lead, expressing my profound dissatisfaction with her request. After much contemplation, I couldn't find any way to reconcile myself with it. Despite her assurances that it wouldn't affect our marriage, it's already taken a significant toll. She seemed visibly angered by my stance, suggesting that if I considered her perspective, I might be more understanding. I attempted to see things from her viewpoint, but I couldn't foresee any positive outcomes. Therefore, my answer had to be no. "How can you be so selfish if you love me?" she retorted. "I'm not the selfish one. Pursuing a sexual encounter with someone else seems to be the epitome of selfishness to me," I replied. "What if I go ahead with it anyway?" she pressed. "There will be serious repercussions for any infidelity. We both made vows of exclusivity 10 years ago," I reminded her. "I know, but this is something I feel compelled to do," she insisted. "Then I suppose our discussion is concluded. You need to seriously reconsider your actions," I declared, rising from my seat and exiting the house. I took my laptop to a Wi-Fi spot and began monitoring their email exchanges. She was furious, but determined to proceed regardless. He revealed he had reserved room 125 at the Hilton in Kansas City for Friday and Saturday nights. Swiftly, I booked the same room for Thursday night. Their plans seemed too convenient. They were also arranging a romantic date for Saturday evening, dinner, dancing, and presumably, intimacy. She even mentioned buying new lingerie for the occasion. As they moved past my rejection and continued planning their weekend, I observed, noting their check-in time of 3 o'clock. He planned to pick her up at 1 o'clock for the 2-hour drive, aiming to arrive as early as possible. I was taken aback to learn that he planned to pick her up at our house. I needed to decide what my next move would be. I also booked a room for the weekend, strategically close to theirs to intercept all communication signals. Over the next few days, I gathered all the necessary equipment. I acquired a couple of compact, high-definition fiber optic video cameras, intending to install them in the room on Thursday, ensuring I'd be prepared to capture their weekend activities. This evidence would serve as potent ammunition for my divorce case. Throughout this time, I completely ignored her, but Wednesday marked the final reckoning for her. I decided to give her one last opportunity. If she chose Frank, our marriage was over. I asked her to join me at the table for a conversation. Despite her apparent reluctance, she obliged. I urged her once more to reconsider, emphasizing the damage her decision would inflict on our marriage. Disregarding my plea, she affirmed her intention to proceed with Frank. With a heavy heart, I realized she had chosen him over our relationship. I stood up and left the room, slamming the door behind me as usual. My marriage was now irretrievably broken, and someone would pay for it. Thursday morning, I went to work and arranged to have the afternoon and the following day off, explaining to my boss that I was finalizing plans to divorce Linda. He expressed his support and granted me the time I needed. That afternoon, I drove to Kansas City, checked into their room, and installed all the surveillance devices, meticulously ensuring they were operational. I wanted to gather irrefutable evidence for the divorce before confronting them. Upon returning home, I contemplated the demise of my marriage, realizing I had one more task to complete. I stopped at a store and purchased a small can of pepper spray, intending to disrupt their romantic date. When I arrived home, Linda was standing in the kitchen. She looked at me expectantly, but I walked past her in silence, slamming my door once again. Linda entered my room, attempting to be amicable. I rebuffed her, instructing her to reserve her friendliness for Frank because I didn't need pity. Ignoring her, I turned away, prompting her to leave. Despite fitful sleep that night, I ensured everything was in place to end this situation. Friday morning, I rose at the usual time and left without uttering a word to her. At the lawyer's office, I signed the necessary papers, informing him that I'd have all the evidence by Monday and requesting that she be served at work that afternoon. I also asked that papers be served to Frank simultaneously, as I was suing him for alienation of affection. Checking Linda's GPS, it indicated she was at the hair salon. Upon returning home, I searched her suitcase and discovered her new, alluring underwear. Regrettably, it wasn't for me. Wearing rubber gloves, I retrieved the pepper spray and discreetly sprayed her underwear and bra cups before returning them to the suitcase. It was time for some fun. Next, I went to the bank and closed all our joint accounts, transferring the funds to a new account. I then canceled all the credit cards with both our names on them. After a satisfyingly thorough warning, I returned home to bid farewell to my wife. It was 12:30, and I knew she'd be preparing for her rendezvous with her new beau. Upon entering the house, Linda was nowhere to be seen, so I assumed she was upstairs getting ready. With resolve, I ascended to her room and entered. She stood there clad in a set of sexy underwear I had once gifted her. As she moved to cover herself, I stopped her, noting I had seen it before. With a new hairdo, flawless makeup, and lingerie, she looked stunning. I couldn't resist speaking my mind. "You look amazing. It's a shame you don't put in this much effort for me." She responded, "It's not like that. I just want to make a good impression." "You seem more concerned about what he thinks than you've ever been about me," I remarked. "I just wanted to feel sexy today," she explained. "While you certainly looked sexy, you know I loved you with all my heart," I countered. "We made vows to forsake all others. That meant something to me, but apparently not so much for you." Approaching her, I gently removed the rings from her left hand. "I gave you this ring on our wedding day. The engagement ring belonged to my mother, so I'll keep it for the same reason. But I won't tolerate you wearing these while you're with someone else." Stunned, she remained silent as I continued. "I won't be here when he arrives, but he can't come into my house. If you cross that line, there will be consequences. I'll be watching." "Why are you doing this?" she protested. "Because you've betrayed our love," I replied coldly. "I hope this weekend is worth it." With that, I turned and walked away from my soon-to-be ex-wife, ignoring her cries as I left. Parking down the street, I kept watch. I ensured I parked where Linda could spot me. If he entered the house, I risked going to jail, but the impact on them would be far worse. Soon enough, his car pulled up. He approached the door, rang the bell, and Linda emerged with her suitcase, immediately wrapping her arms around his neck for a passionate kiss. As he picked up her suitcase, she shot me a smug grin, then sat beside him in the car, flashing another smug look as they drove past. I responded by flipping her off, causing her smug expression to vanish. Returning home, I changed all the locks and garage door code. After grabbing the suitcase I'd already packed, I headed to Kansas City, checked in, and set up my laptop in my room. The camera captured Linda unclothed in bed, indicating he'd already had his way with her, and it was evident he hadn't lasted long. Emerging from the bathroom, he too was unclothed, revealing his diminutive size, prompting laughter from me. As he approached the bed ready for another round, Linda smiled and embraced him, but I couldn't help but chuckle as she reached for his small member. It was clear she wasn't accustomed to such a lackluster performance. Her frustration was apparent as he struggled to satisfy her, and it seemed she would return home dissatisfied, only to be kicked out the next day. He made several unsuccessful attempts, while she remained unfulfilled, much to my amusement. Satisfied with the outcome, I left to grab dinner and a few drinks, feeling vindicated. I set everything to record, gathering evidence for my lawyer and to underscore her poor choice in partners. Upon my return, he was asleep, and she appeared even more frustrated. Despite the initial pain of losing my wife, this situation was becoming rather amusing. I went to bed envisioning the mischief I'd stir up the next day. Thoughts of attractive women at the bar reminded me of the freedom to pursue them. Falling asleep with a contented smile, I felt relieved knowing my path was clear. Upon waking refreshed, I eagerly prepared for some enjoyment. After a pleasant shower, I headed out for a nice breakfast, grabbing snacks in case I couldn't get away later. Returning to my room, I contacted the local florist, ordering a bouquet for Linda. It mirrored the ones I'd given her on our anniversaries, a poignant reminder of what she was risking. Though I hoped for good timing, it was inconsequential, the delivery aligning perfectly. As they returned and began to engage intimately, a knock interrupted. The florist delivered the flowers, and I observed a mix of contemplation and anger on Linda's face. She retrieved her cell phone and dialed. Soon enough, my phone was ringing. I answered, and we exchanged a brief conversation. "Hello? How are you doing?" she inquired. "Not worth a crap. My wife is out with some other guy while I stew in anger," I responded bitterly. "Why do you ask? It's not like you care." "Well, I just received a bouquet of flowers, similar to what you usually get me for our anniversary. I wanted to know what you were up to," she explained. I don't understand how you could think I did that. Firstly, you and your brilliant boyfriend kept me in the dark about your whereabouts. Secondly, if I had sent you flowers, they wouldn't have been pleasant. The card would have been scathing, addressing my cheating wife, I retorted. And you, little Frankies, maybe they'll give you a glimpse of what you're sacrificing. I noticed her stunned expression as I turned off my phone. She attempted to call again, but of course, there was no answer. After a few more attempts, she gave up. She informed him of my words, and he reassured her that I'd come around. However, I knew I wouldn't until I rid myself of her. Though she initially resisted his advances, she eventually relented. I seized the opportunity to order Linda's favorite pizza for delivery. The pizza arrived just as he was mounting her again. He grew irate and refused to pay, but the delivery person confirmed the room number and his cell phone number. Threatened with police involvement, Frank reluctantly paid up. They opted to have a meal since they had already paid for it. After enjoying their lunch, they conversed for a while. However, Frankie quickly resumed his advances. As things heated up between them, I phoned the sandwich shop and ordered her favorite sandwich for delivery. He had been engaged in intercourse with her for about a minute when the sandwich arrived. Upon seeing it, Linda speculated that I must have discovered their location. He was incredulous, but she recounted my suspicions about her new partner, Crack-On, suggesting that I might have hacked into her email. She praised my intelligence, though he seemed unconvinced. Despite this minor hiccup, they decided to get dressed and go out for a while, planning to clean up upon their return and prepare for their romantic date. She assured him she would make it up to him later. As they departed, I couldn't help but laugh hysterically. Tears streamed down my face as I anticipated the unfolding events. Upon their return, Linda hurriedly stripped and dashed into the shower. She spent a considerable time there, emerging with her chest and groin area bright red and evidently painful. It appeared that little Frankie wouldn't be getting any action that night. As Linda lay on the bed, groaning in discomfort, Frankie attempted to touch her, only to be met with her angry outburst, citing her pain and lack of interest. She attributed her discomfort to a possible allergic reaction to her new lingerie, unaware of my involvement. I spent the remainder of the day organizing my videos and preparing DVDs for my lawyer and Frankie's wife. Satisfied with my accomplishments, I retired to bed, a content smile on my face. It seemed that trouble had found its way into paradise, and I was the orchestrator of it. Sunday morning I rose and headed home, knowing Linda would face even more turmoil upon her return. Tomorrow, it would all come to an end. When Frankie dropped her off later that day, he didn't even escort her to the door. He simply let her out. I sat on the couch, engrossed in a football game, and didn't acknowledge her arrival. She announced she was home, but I remained indifferent. Walking between me and the TV, she offered a seductive smile, saying she thought I'd be happy to see her. "You're not dead," I retorted. "What would give you that idea? Do I look like I've become dim-witted over the last few days?" She responded defensively. "I know you did, but I didn't. I never thought you were foolish," I countered. "And did you really think you loved me enough to move past this?" "Well, I loved you with all my heart, but that was in the past. You broke my heart when you chose him, despite my pleas," I lamented. "I told you how I felt, and it meant nothing to you. So as far as I'm concerned, once you left with him, I didn't really care if you came back or not." "I can't believe you feel that way about me," she protested. "Believe it, because you made a colossal mistake," I asserted. "I don't know if there's any chance for us going forward. I'll do anything to make it up to you. I realize now that I made a huge mistake. Is there anything I can do?" she implored. "You can get on your knees and eat my crap," I snapped. "But you know I can't do that," she responded. "I know you won't do that. So I guess that tells me how much your promise to do anything to save our marriage is worth," I concluded. "It's worth about as much as your promise to be faithful when we got married. I was thinking about you all the way home today. I really want to make love to you tonight. I need you," she pleaded. "You need me? I don't think so. And as far as making love tonight, there's not much chance," I replied sternly. "Did you have little Frankie use a rubber every time he had closeness with you?" "No, he's married, and I can't have children," she explained. "Do you think you're the only one he's used this excuse with? You're now damaged goods as far as I'm concerned. There's no way I would sleep with you until you have a clean bill of health from a doctor. Also, I don't do seconds, I declared. I know he's clean, but you could use a rubber if you don't think so, she suggested. Right. I'm going to use a rubber to sleep with my wife after she slept with some loser bareback all weekend. Screw you. You chose little Frankie over me, I retorted. I'm going out for a while. I really can't stand looking at your cheating self anymore tonight. You can sleep in the guest room. I prefer the master bedroom, and unlike you, I didn't do anything wrong. Can we talk about this? She pleaded. We can talk tomorrow after you get back from work. I really don't know what else there is to discuss, I replied, ending the conversation. I left the house and headed to a nearby bar and grill to grab some dinner and clear my mind. Well, my mind was already clear as I knew exactly what I was doing. I just wanted to get away from her. Since I'm not much of a drinker, I simply ate my meal and then went for a long walk. Upon returning home, I found her in my bed. I glared at her and demanded she get out of my bed. This is our bed. I have just as much right to be here as you do, she protested. The hell you do. You gave up that right when you slept with little Frankie, so you either get out of my bed or I'll drag your sorry butt out of here and toss you in the street, I asserted. She started crying and slowly left the room. I closed and locked the door behind her, still hearing her sobs as she walked down the hallway. The next morning, I completely ignored her. We each had breakfast, and she left at her usual time. Before leaving, she turned and told me she loved me. I shot her a scornful look and emphasized that I had loved her too, making sure to use the past tense. Tears began to well up as she turned and walked away. Once she was gone, I began packing her things in garbage bags. As I packed, I called Frankie's wife, Linda. I asked if she knew her husband had spent the weekend with my wife. She thought he had been away on business, so when I offered her copies of my evidence, she eagerly agreed. I was stunned when she opened the door. She was absolutely stunning. I was speechless and had to apologize, explaining that I was taken aback by her beauty, which was indeed true. We got down to business, and I explained what had happened over the weekend. She was furious, and we decided she would accompany me to the lawyer's office to see if he would take her case. He did, and even offered us a discount. While Linda filled out the paperwork, I spoke with the lawyer. I asked if I needed to wait to serve Frankie to protect Linda. He assured me that as long as she signed the papers beforehand, she would be okay. Linda and I went out for lunch while they prepared her papers. After she signed, I took her home and then went home myself to await Linda's call. I was supposed to call Linda that night to update her on how things went. Around 3 o'clock, my phone rang. She was not pleased. "What the hell is this?" she demanded. "What do you mean?" I replied innocently. "I just got served with divorce papers, and Frank received papers for a lawsuit," she exclaimed. "It seems pretty straightforward to me. I warned you there would be consequences for your weekend. Apparently, you didn't take me seriously," I retorted. "I didn't think you would go through with this," she protested. "Maybe you should have listened to me instead of listening to the nonsense that little Frankie was feeding you." "I don't want to discuss this over the phone. We'll talk when you come back to my house," I replied before hanging up. I then took the garbage bags containing her belongings and threw them into the front yard, preparing for her return. As she pulled into the driveway, she erupted in anger. I recorded the confrontation, intending to use it as evidence for a restraining order to keep her away from me. Despite her screaming and spitting, I remained calm and composed as she vented her frustration. I finally gave in and initiated our last conversation. "If you're willing to talk, you need to calm down so we can have a discussion. Otherwise, I'll pack your things in your car and you can leave. I never imagined you'd do this to me." "Do this to you? You foolish woman. You did this to me and to our relationship. I warned you repeatedly not to do this, even begged you not to ruin our marriage. But you chose to destroy it. So why would you think I wouldn't file for divorce? You claimed you loved me. I did. I loved you more than anything. And in return, you shattered my heart. The evident issue is that you didn't love or respect me. I can't stay with someone who thinks so little of me, but I still have feelings for you. Nonsense. If you truly loved me, you wouldn't have slept with little Frankie this weekend. Why do you keep calling him little Frankie? Because I had video cameras in your room and recorded the whole weekend. It's obvious why I call him little. The moment I saw his pitiful size, I laughed until I cried. I questioned if you could even feel him inside you. I noticed you weren't climaxing like you do when we're intimate. We don't just have sex, we make love. That's the significant difference. I agree. What we had was genuine love. You're probably going to miss that. Look at it positively. Now you're free to be with anyone you desire. You could have a different partner every night. I don't want that. I want you and only you. Let's go inside and talk for a bit. I apologize for being harsh, but I'm filled with anger right now. However, know that I would never physically harm you. The same cannot be said for little Frankie. We entered and settled at the kitchen table, a familiar spot for us. It hit me hard, realizing this would be our final gathering here. We sat together as she initiated the conversation this time. I urged myself to stay composed and avoid speaking harshly. You wouldn't actually harm Frank, would you? Linda began, her voice tinged with concern. Why not? He shattered my once blissful marriage. I believe he should face consequences beyond my lawsuit and his divorce, I responded, my tone firm. He's not getting a divorce. His wife agreed to our arrangement and allowed him to proceed, Linda countered, hoping to present a different perspective. That's just a tactic to vilify me and win her over, I argued, skeptical of their motives. I spoke to his wife this morning and shared my evidence. Now we share a lawyer, who even gave us a discount, Linda informed me, revealing her proactive steps. I wish you had been truthful when I asked how you'd react if I wanted to be with another woman, I accused, feeling betrayed. You would have reacted strongly just as his wife did. I don't believe you, Linda defended herself, doubting my hypothetical tolerance. And that's precisely why we're divorcing. I no longer care about your beliefs. When you call him later, you'll find he's also been ousted, I declared, sealing the fate of our marriage. So, you're really kicking me out? Linda asked, seeking clarification on her immediate future. Since the night you revealed your plan, I've been contemplating in the guest room. Within an hour, I decided on divorce, I explained, detailing my decision-making process. Why didn't you inform me beforehand? Linda inquired, puzzled by my silence. I doubted you'd stop. It would have only angered you. Despite explaining my feelings several times, the choice had to be yours, I reasoned, highlighting the importance of personal choice. I saw in your emails that my words meant nothing to you, confirming my decision, Linda shared, revealing the final straw in her decision. I signed the papers the following Friday while you prepared for your date. I can't believe I was that naive, I confessed, reflecting on my delayed realization. Is there any chance for forgiveness? Linda asked, her voice softening. Linda, I once loved you enough to consider it, but last night was your final chance, and you squandered it. While I might forgive, I can never trust you again. Living with that uncertainty isn't an option. It's best we end it now, I concluded, closing the chapter on our relationship. She burst into tears, but I remained resolute. Unlike you, I've pondered this extensively and always arrive at the same conclusion. I'm divorcing you, and I'll make sure little Frankie pays for what he did to our marriage, I declared firmly. Before you leave, you can contact him and arrange a place to stay, but don't attempt to use your credit cards. They've all been canceled. I left half the funds in our checking account for you, but I removed my name from it. I'll split our savings with you. You can keep your car, but you're responsible for the payments. All your belongings and clothes are yours to keep, and once you find a place, take as much furniture as you need. However, the house is mine. If I sell it, I'll share the proceeds. It's all specified in the divorce papers. If you choose to contest it, I'll use all my evidence, even if it means destroying you. I hope it doesn't come to that, but I'm prepared to do what's necessary, I continued, outlining the consequences of her actions. I won't fight it. This is all my fault. I just wish I could take it back, Linda responded, her voice filled with regret. You know the difference between a cheating wife and a light bulb, don't you? I asked, trying to inject a dark humor into the situation. No, what is it? Linda inquired, puzzled and still tearful. You can unscrew a light bulb, I answered, attempting to lighten the mood. She didn't find it amusing. I escorted her out of the house, packing her belongings into her car as she cried. Once it was loaded, I handed her one last item, her wedding ring, flattened with a hammer. It's now scrap gold, I explained, symbolizing the end of our marriage. After closing her car door and kissing her forehead, I uttered my final words. Goodbye, my love. Walking back to my empty house, I didn't watch her drive away. Tears filled my eyes, and I cried for another hour until I was emotionally spent. It was time to consider my options. Option 1. Drown my sorrows in alcohol, but I disliked the idea. Option 2. End my life to please everyone, but I refused to grant her that satisfaction. Option 3. Stand tall, knowing I was blameless, and move forward. The absence of Linda would be a vast improvement, bringing a smile to my face. Standing upright and still smiling, I called Linda. We made plans for dinner, signaling the beginning of my healing journey. We might become just friends, or perhaps I could find someone better, I contemplated aloud as the memory of her lingered in my mind.